And the presentation we have now will be by Jay Goldberg. And it's using data analytics for segregation of duties. Jay is currently the Vice President of Internal Audit for Take-Two Interactive Software, a leading developer, publisher, and distributor of interactive software games. He also leads their global SOX effort. Prior to joining Take-Two, Jay was the Director of Audit for Eagle Global Logistics, international freight forwarder. He has over 20 years of business experience, including 13 as heads of internal audit. He's a CIA, a CFSA, has an MBA from Bentley, a Bachelor of Arts from Brandeis, and like me is a lifelong Red Sox fan. And those are the important things, okay? So now I give you Jay Goldberg. Jay?
So unlike most of our previous presenters, I think everyone's heard of Bristol-Myers Squibb and Travelers and AXA, Equitable. Most people don't know who Take-Two Interactive Software is. And even if you're a gamer, you've probably heard more about our labels, Rockstar and 2K, than you have heard of the parent company. A few interesting statistics on gamers. When most people think of video games, they think of kids. The average gamer today is 33 years old, has grown up with video games ever since they were young, and it's not your typical, I'll call it gamer nerd who sits in the basement and plays video games 12, 14, 16 hours a day. It's people, a lot of people probably play games. In fact, with the advent of the Wii, my mother, who has never played a video game in her life, was able to pick up a Wii and actually play Wii bowling. It's just so easy that anybody can do it. So we are, as you saw, a developer, publisher, distributor of handheld video games. A couple of our key labels, obviously, are Rockstar, the Grand Theft Auto series. When we released Grand Theft Auto 4 on April 29th, for the first week sales, it was the single biggest entertainment release of anything ever. Bigger than movies, bigger than other video games, bigger than records, bigger than anything. We sold $500 million worldwide at retail in 1 week. We were on the covers of mainstream newspapers in 10 or 15 different countries. I happened to be in Spain doing an audit of our Madrid office, and the mainstream everyday newspaper that most people read in Madrid devoted a third of the first page to the release of Grand Theft Auto 4. It really is a phenomenon. And although in some ways we get a bad rap for some of the Rockstar things, and especially Grand Theft Auto, because of the way we've defined and the way we've developed the game, it is in fact a very open game. And as part of that, it means you can do anything you want within the game. We are a decentralized company, but we really have two general ledger systems, one of which covers North America, one of which covers our European and now our Asian operation. We are projected revenue this year of $1.5 billion. I have an audit group of 10 people worldwide, and when we started the whole SOX process, I had 3 people in Europe, I had 2 people here, and as you'll see, and as probably everybody did, we used a whole lot of consultants. One of the things that was a requirement for SOX was every company needed to do some kind of a segregation of duties analysis within their systems. And obviously everybody spent an awful lot of time looking at their business processes, documenting the processes, documenting the controls. And I think a lot of people forgot about, at least initially, the fact that they needed to really look in their systems. It just was a much bigger task than we thought it was ever going to be. We have about 150 users on our 2 instances of J.D. Edwards. We had, at the time, absolutely no internal IT audit resources. Sandra's lucky. She's got 5. I've got 1, almost 1 now, and we definitely do some co-sourcing because it makes sense. But as we were looking at segregation of duties for the first year, our question was, how do we address this? And also, after we've done so much else of SOX, how hard could this really be? So year 1 was consultants, both on the business process side, both on the segregation of duties side. I would say we probably had somewhere between 15 and 30 consultants running around our company at any given time. And there were probably 2 to 4 of them focused full-time just on segregation of duties. We actually used one of the big 4 firms. I'm not going to mention which one. It's irrelevant. at the end of the day, they ended up doing a good job. But they had a proprietary tool that would take information from our J.D. Edwards instances. They would run it through their tool and tell us what all the segregation of duties issues were, at least in the way we had things set up. We got so many false positives on that first list of segregation of duties issues. I think we had somewhere between 5,000 and 7,000 conflicts that the system identified as you have to do something about. Now, one of the things that we realized is, one, there were a lot of things that they were saying were segregation of duties issues that weren't even relevant. For instance, if you can post cash to an account and you can also do a bank reconciliation, their system says, rightly so, hey, this could be a conflict. But we don't use the bank reconciliation module within J.D. Edwards, so it's completely irrelevant to us. We were actually able to look at our business, and it took a long time, but we were able to look at our business and say, okay, we think legitimately we've got somewhere between 30 and 40 real conflicts of interest that could happen in our company, in our system, the way we're using the system. So let's kind of filter all of that stuff, and let's look at what the real risks are at that point. As I said, it was a huge effort. I mean, hundreds of hours of consultants, hundreds of hours of meetings with employees, working with the business owners to say, we think we have some conflicts. Do people really need all of this access to do their job? I mean, we certainly have a very, very lean organization. We're about 2,100 people, about 1,300 to 1,400 of which are in our development studios creating games. So we're running, I think, 11 or 12 sales offices along with a distribution facility that has about 400,000 square feet of distribution space, so roughly the size of 3 1/3 football fields. But did people get this access just over time because they move from job to job? Can we reassign duties? Everything okay? And it was expensive. I mean, obscenely expensive. The whole Sarbanes effort, year one, was obscenely expensive. But we spent really, probably between $300,000 and $500,000 just on SOD issues. It took way too long. Again, it was probably 3 to 4 months after we ran through the tool that we spent fixing, first of all, identifying the issues that were real issues, but then fixing all of the issues. And there really were a significant number of people that had conflicts of interest. Go ahead. No, go ahead. We're about $1.5 billion. At the time in year one, we were probably $1 billion. So we're just finishing up year 4 as of October 31 this year. So that was year 1. Years 2 and 3, I think we did a better job improving. We certainly used fewer consultants in year 2 and year 3. We did actually use the same vendor. But we really decided, I think in some ways, again, late in year 2, to actually look at segregation of duties. While we didn't wait until Q4 as we had done in year 1, it really was we said, okay, end of 3rd quarter, let's look at it, let's see how we're doing, and then let's try to remediate everything. Again, they used their proprietary tool. It was, I think, a better process. It didn't take quite as long, but it was still extremely painful. Year 3, we used the same firm, but we had different consultants. The couple of consultants that we had used in years 1 and 2 had left. So we were assigned a new team. And with it, all of the headaches, all of the nightmares. Again, I think it took way too long. They somehow never got all of our specs. They ran it through their tool. We started with the 5,000 issues again. It was really a nightmare process. It didn't take as much effort as we thought, but it really was a bigger effort than it should have been. Again, less expensive, but still not cheap. We probably paid, $150,000 in year 3 ultimately for it, which to me still seemed really high. Again, given we had 2 instances of the same system, there had to have been an easier way to do it. And I think one of the biggest issues we found was people were making system changes all the time. And we're not finding out about this until the once a year and then sort of the second time later in the year when we run the SOD analysis, we analyze it, and then we say, okay, let's run around, let's remediate it, let's figure out mitigating controls if it needs to be. And then we have to retest it again because we need to prove both to ourselves and to our auditors that, yeah, we have things under control as of year end, and therefore we're comfortable with our 404 assertion. So our solution really was to automate it. As we were talking through how we were going to do it this year, I said, we know the data best. We finally had somebody in-house who not only knew our J.D. Edwards system well, but had been involved in the general SOX process. He was tending more towards IT, but also had a really good business sense. So we thought, you know what? He's a perfect person to work with us to help define what are the issues and how can we scope it out. And once we had it scoped out, we had already been using ACL at the company. I've probably been using it for somewhere between 13 and 15 years at various companies that I've been at. But we already had it in place. We already have access to all of the data there. So we spent some time with IT and said, where can we find security? Where can we identify those scenarios? How can we make sure that we identify all of the, I'll call them shortcuts. In J.D. Edwards, they actually call it fast path, which allows you to bypass what you've been given and almost have free reign in the system if you know what you're doing. In Europe, we actually had a different complexity because in Europe, in the U.S., it's all based on groups, and you're assigned to a group, and based on that group, you have a certain amount of security and certain things that you can get to. You also then secondarily have individual security. So you're part of a group, but there are certain things you need to do. So you as an individual may be assigned certain rights that everybody else in the group doesn't have. In Europe, they do things a little bit differently. They'll call it menu security. It's not really security, but they assign people certain things on their menus. And unless you have this fast path workaround or a couple of other workarounds, you really can only do in the system what's on your menu. And so in year 3, one of the issues we came back with from the consultants was, you've got all these segregation of duties issues that we've identified for Europe, but when you go and look at it, well, it's great that it says they can post journal entries anywhere in the system, sort of from a database level, but the only thing they can do is they can input accounts payable vouchers. So why is this really a problem? And I think they failed to take into account the whole menu restriction or menu limitation that we had put in Europe. Again, the beauty, once we defined it, no consultants. It's been great. I mean, we're actually still working through the process in Europe, but for North America, we really have a repeatable, on-demand kind of exercise. This runs in 10 minutes. And anytime we want, once a month, once a quarter, however often we feel like doing it, we can run, and it will grab the right information from the security tables. It will look at both group security and individual security, and then give us out a list based on what we've defined as those 30 instances or 35 instances. And will say to us, okay, these are the people that have conflicts. Here's what their conflicts are. And we can then say, oh yeah, we knew about all those. Or, well, wait, now all of a sudden we have 2 different conflicts, ones that we haven't had before or new people. And then we can go back to the process owners more proactively than reactively and say, okay, somebody granted this security. Why? What are they doing? What do they need? If in fact they really need that level of security in order to do their job, then we say, okay, let's make sure that we find mitigating controls now, not run around at the end of the year and scramble to try to say, okay, how are we going to mitigate this? And if we need to put in a new control, you know what? We'll do that. And a lot of times we found, once we identify them, people say, oh, I didn't even realize they could do those things. Or somebody had one job. When they moved over into a different position, we just knew what they needed. So we asked IT to add it. They added it, and nobody even gave consideration to the old security that they had. They really didn't need it anymore. Again, it's been extremely accurate. Took a little bit of fine-tuning at first, but again, one of the beauties of ACL is if we got data that didn't seem to make sense to us, we'd look at the query, we'd say, okay, how do we need to filter it differently? What do we need to look at it? So that